Part 24. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 233. Sneak attacks don't count. If you have the ability, start over again. Wow, he yelled, just about to rush forward and have a good fight with Garp to prove his strength. Luffy saw Garp and actually fought with Bayou first. A long dragon of energy and blood turned into red steam, and Garp's jet black armed domination was fighting together. He was worthy of being called the Iron Fist. He didn't use any special abilities, just relied on pure physical skills, and even the air was shaken by his punches and kicks. There are visible ripples. Boy Bayou, go quickly. If you don't leave, you'll have no chance. Take Luffy with you. What? Cap, what do you mean? I don't have time to explain so much. As I said, the determination of the world government in Wano is far beyond your imagination. Don't think that you can sit back and relax after solving Zero. Their most powerful top-secret weapon, you haven't seen it yet. In what seemed like a life-and-death melee, the actual danger was pitifully small. The two people, who knew each other tacitly, took advantage of the opportunity of fist-to-flesh interlacing to start a conversation directly and calmly. Especially Garp, he has been eagerly urging Bayou to leave. Although he was able to deal with the CP chief who controlled Zero, it was beyond his expectation. But, the ultimate secret of the world government is not that simple. That is, even the rebellious Roger One Piece has the ultimate weapon of despair. He is so desperate that he cannot even raise the mood of resistance. He can only sadly say One Piece at the cost of his own life in the execution ground. With his last words, he burned himself into a torch, illuminating the hope of future struggle. He placed his hope in future generations, hoping that an era would be born that could truly resist the power of the world government. Move. It will be troublesome any later. You shouldn't die here. Taking advantage of another opportunity of fists and palms interlocking, Garp began to advise Bayou in a deep voice. In vicissitudes of life size, there was no trace of the usual carelessness, only deep sincerity. He was sincere and hoped that Bayou could learn from it. He thought that he escaped from the crisis not only because of Luffy beside him, but also because he saw hope in him. What? Roger told him personally at the beginning, hope. This shouldn't be your end. Garp taking huge risks and risking his life to advise and cover Bayou's departure, just for this trivial hope. Roger bet his life on the future in his eyes. Garp bet his life on Bayou. On his body. Whether it is judging from the revolutionary program he told long before or from the speed of his current growth. Bayou is the candidate most likely to achieve justice in his eyes, no one. But, overthrowing corruption is a matter of the future. No matter how powerful the eagle is, it is still weak in its fledgling age. Although he is willing to bet everything on Bayou, Garp still does not feel that the current Bayou has the power to face the world government. Even if he is not angry anymore, Garp, I have to admit that the power represented by the guy behind him is definitely far more terrifying than imagined. That is definitely not an existence that humans can resist. Go quickly. Pure power erupted from Garp's iron fist. The oncoming powerful force staggered Bayou, who was caught off guard. He punched him and flew away. The powerful force gave up point-to-point killing, but instead it turned into an impact on the opposite side. It didn't cause much damage to Bayou, but it directly knocked him away from the battlefield for 10 miles. Is he forcing me to leave? Bayou blinked and understood Garp's intention. One after another Luffy and I were forced out of the battlefield. Is it possible that the strength of the new guy is so terrifying? Bayou couldn't help but frowned. The power of destruction was flowing on Jin Kunluo, and the look in his eyes was dark, and he didn't know what he was thinking. What? Center of battlefield. Garp, what are you doing? The bald old man holding a long knife in his arms, his face as gloomy as water. What to do? Of course I am chasing pirates and doing my duty as a navy. Garp scratched his head and said seriously. Chasing pirates? Your pursuit is to beat them all away one by one, to hunt them down. The bald old man's face became more and more gloomy, and a faint black air filled the long knife. How do I know? They are so famous, but they are not durable at all. I just used too much strength, and this is the result. How can you blame me? At worst, I can be gentler next time. Garp twisted the joints on his hands and said with an innocent face. His eyes were full of sincerity. He was full of drama from head to toe. His acting skills were top-notch, and he could even compete for the Golden Horse Award. Looking at Garp in this look, the bald old man's face turned completely dark. Ever since this guy took the initiative, the bald old man had a feeling that something was wrong. With this guy's lazy character, he actually took the first step without even calling. How could he think that something was wrong? Especially after knocking Luffy away, this feeling became even more intense. When he knocked away all the white feathers, the bald old man couldn't bear it anymore and exploded directly. This guy was not chasing after each other, he was clearly chasing him. The pirates flew away, deliberately creating a distance between them, and took the opportunity to escape quickly. Oops, the long knife in his hand was slashed out, and the faint cold light stopped directly in front of Garp, blocking him on the way to take action. He was quickly. Did you see it? Garp, who was blocked in his path, shrank his pupils and his heart sank instantly, but his expression was not weak at all, and he started shouting with dissatisfaction. Eh? What do you mean? Even if you are the 5 old stars, you can't be so unreasonable and actually stop me, a navy, from pursuing pirates. This is too much. Isn't it normal to not be sure of your strength when you are sick? There's no need to go to war over this. It's a big deal. I'll have to control my strength more in the future. Garp glanced at his mouth. The faint sword blade was right in front of him, but he didn't even blink. He was still chattering endlessly. The guy who usually didn't bother to say anything now has turned into a chatterbox. No need for next time, the bald old man snorted coldly. Just as he was about to say a few words to him, his expression suddenly changed. Damn it. Garp, you are stalling for time and giving them a chance to escape. I can't understand what you're saying. Garp pretended to be dumbfounded. He wanted to argue with him a few words, but the bald old man didn't fall into the trap anymore. He looked at him coldly. His figure turned into an afterimage, holding the bag in his hand. With a long knife, Wang Bai rushed in the direction where he was leaving. Why? Garp sighed quietly, finally relaxed his mind, and dropped his fists feebly. His physical strength had already been exhausted in the battle with Baiyu. Just now he was just relying on his showmanship to confront Wu Laoxing. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 234. If we don't fight with real swords and guns, we really think that the bald 5-star star is a fool and let him and Baiyu play a fake match for so long, move around the field, and take the opportunity to talk, and there is no abnormality at all? I can only drag you here for you. Whether you live or die next is up to you. White Feather Boy. Don't let me down, you must survive. Take my idiot grandson, to your future alive, Roger, can't think of me. Garp slowly lowered his eyes, no one knew what he was thinking in his heart. Yin, an earth-shattering sword sound suddenly appeared in the world. The sword chant seemed to be describing the contention of 2 peerless swordsmen. What? Garp opened his eyes suddenly, and real eyes burst out of them. How could he catch up so quickly? Although he didn't buy much time, Baiyu's physical skills were enough for him to escape the pursuit range. How come? Garp frowned, his plan was completely disrupted, and his thoughts were all twisted together. Miso, several more sword lights interlaced, followed by the collision of two sword lights, one black and one white. Two figures fell from the sky. The two fighting were clearly Baiyu holding Jin Kunluo, and the bald five old stars holding a generation of ghosts. You actually didn't run away, and you still had the courage to stay. You are worthy of being Baiyu, the replica who is known as the most evil leader among this generation of supernovas. The bald five old star slowly took back the Uday guide in his hand. The faint cold light of the demon sword wrapped around his body, making his cold words appear more like whispers coming from the netherworld. Cut and run? Why should I run? Baiyu took the golden Kunluo in his hand and played with swords. It's not that he doesn't believe Garp risked his life to warn him. It's that he has a reason why he can't leave. Idiot captain, road crazy swordsman, the middle-class uncle, the lecherous chef, the cowardly shooter. Although these guys on the ship have various shortcomings. But they are all my partners, and I will never abandon them and leave alone. Baiyu spoke slowly, as if he was answering the doubts in his eyes for Garp. Maybe at the beginning, Baiyu's purpose was not pure. But as time went by and he experienced more and more things, even he couldn't help but sink in. The members on the ship were not only the cornerstone of his strength, but also his companions who could trust him with his life. Partner, Garp lowered his eyes, as if he had received a satisfactory answer, but also as if he had no choice but to face reality. Besides, I haven't played it yet. Where did you get your confidence? You can definitely defeat me. Running away without fighting is not my style, Baiyu. The endless banquets, the endless wine, the endless scenery, and the beauties around him, want to take these away from him. You have to ask the knife in his hand if he agrees. Baiyu, the corners of his mouth curved, and an endless look bloomed on his confident face. The dark power of destruction bloomed in his hands, wrapped together with the black armed color, and silently wrapped around Jin Kunluo. Shura. The activation of his exclusive skills allows him to perfectly integrate dozens of powers within his body. His momentum is like an abyss and an ocean, directly overwhelming the entire audience, making Fujitora breathless. Not to mention the Marines outside the center circle. Soldiers, they all run as far as they can. Those with strength below the level of Major General are not even qualified to watch from a distance. Young man, your courage is commendable. However, the tone was a bit too loud. It seems that I haven't made a move for too long, and the world has forgotten the reputation of this demonic sword in my hand. The bald five-old star slowly raised the long knife in his hand. Show the world your colors. Demon sword, Oni Tetsu. Scarlet blood split from his arm and surged towards the bloodthirsty demon knife in Wu Laoxing's hand. On the demon knife that had drunk the blood, a faint halo emanated from his crimson blade. A strange scene, like bloodthirsty ghosts in awesome horror movies. Pretend to be a ghost, Baiyu snorted disdainfully. One sword style, profound meaning, 3,000 worlds. Silver light flowed in the tips of his hair, and the long knife in his hand danced wildly, and the afterimage of the blade became a piece. In the blink of an eye, how many knives were cut out on the dark golden Kunluo? The speed was so fast and the number was huge. Not much weaker than the one used by Zoro's three-sword style. Clang, 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 the swords collided, like gold and jade, and water splashed. From the moment it started to sound, it connected directly into one without a moment's pause. Destruction. The black light and the charming blood light were fighting together. In an instant, the two of them fought for hundreds of rounds. Wow! Zoro stared at the two fighting figures without blinking, looking very seriously, not wanting to miss a single thing. From his perspective, this was definitely the highest level kendo duel in the world. Although the two people fighting may not be true swordsmen, but their control of swordsmanship and strength is definitely the best in the world. Even on the Grand Channel, it is almost impossible to find higher level swordsmen. Even his original duel with Hawkeye was a bit inferior in terms of swordsmanship. "Hey, who do you think can win?" Robin reached out of the flower and patted Sauron on the shoulder. Robin, who had limited strength and could not see the truth, had to ask his friends for help if he wanted to know the situation. With such strength around him, Enelu was deeply trapped. The second disease is that Sanji is addicted to beauty, the captain is a slut, and Ace has an average relationship. Although the green algae head in front of him is also in a daze with a look of infatuation, but after thinking about it, I guess he is the best. Reliable. The vice-captain's sword was so sharp that it could cut through all matter, and the attack was unstoppable and impossible to dodge. The old man's attack was extremely strange and unpredictable, somewhere between tangible and intangible. Zoro didn't even look back and continued to give his opinions. "What I'm asking is, which of them has a better chance of winning?" Robin was confused when he heard it, and he held on until the end, not understanding who had the upper hand. Robin finally realized that it was a mistake for him to ask Sauron. Ask a guy who is crazy about this sword and expect to get some reliable answer. I should really ask Zoro. Robin helplessly held his forehead, just about to use the power of the flower fruit to go to Ace to ask about the result. The entangled black and red lights in the field suddenly changed. Bang! A bright light burst out from the collision of pitch black and scarlet. Like the singularity of the Big Bang, powerful kinetic energy burst out. Taking the place where the two people were fighting as the origin, they attacked in all directions. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 235. Several warships that were close to each other were bombarded by the aftermath of the fight between the two. The terrifying shockwave was like the straw that broke the camel's back. They were crushed into pieces of sawdust all over the sky. Boom boom boom, the strong wind pressure carried the wood chips and scattered them in all directions, causing them to stagger around. Don't let anything happen. White Feather. After forcibly using the Huawa fruit to stabilize his body, Robin quickly looked in Bayu's direction. The clothes were infected by the sword energy and became torn to pieces. There are several small cuts on the arm, which must have been scratched by wind blades and have begun to heal. There was a mark on his right arm that had been scratched by a sharp object, but it stopped before the clothes and there was no blood spilled. There was still that familiar look on his handsome face. As if he felt Robin's gaze, he took the initiative to turn his head and gave her a reassuring look. Fine. Very good. Robin cried out in surprise. Before she could have a good time, the words of the bald five-star star rang out again on the field. The strength is really good. No wonder you dare to be so arrogant, but if you regard this as your wanton reliance, it would be too naive. The bright red blood trickled out from his right arm and rushed towards the bloodthirsty demon sword. On the exposed chest of the kimono, Bayu's Jinkunluo cut a deep scar that could be seen in the bones, and the remaining damage was the force covered the wound. It blocked all means of treatment, so that the wound could not even heal. It could only bleed out continuously. The pure white kimono had been dyed blood red. Every action with the tearing of the wound on the chest caused by it. If it were an ordinary person, even if he did not lose too much blood and fainted, he would still be involved in the wound and unable to move. The bald old man in front of him could still move as usual. Except for his face being slightly pale, other places Leng is no different from ordinary people. He is worthy of being the top of the world government, the 5 old stars. Laugh. His strength is not that great, but his tone is quite good. Bayu sneered, his face full of disdain. Do you really think he is scared? Can you make him panic with just a harsh word? Are you kidding? After so many rounds of fighting, Bayu has roughly figured out the opponent's strength. Hard. In terms of strength, This bald man is 1 or 2 levels better than Sengoku and Garp. He can barely keep up with himself simply by relying on the demon sword in his hand and his desperate fighting style. Even so, in a fight, that is to say, he is just a little stronger than himself in the normal state. After turning on Shura, he can directly suppress him and fight. If it weren't for the generation of ghosts in his hands and his poor recovery power, he would have been defeated long ago. It's in his own hands. It's a pity that all the destructive power in his body was poured into Jin Kunluo and eaten, otherwise it wouldn't be so troublesome. After the destructive power in his body slowed down, he suppressed his recovery power and suffocated Biba to death. After 10 rounds, Bai Yu had the confidence to kill the old man with his sword. The main reason was the one-generation ghost sword in the opponent's hand. It was indeed worthy of the name of the demon sword. It was between the virtual and the real. The attack was too weird. Bai Yu almost got hit and almost had his right arm cut off. If you are given more time to grow, maybe one day you will. The bald 5-old star looked deeply in Bai Yu's direction, with deep fear hidden under his round-bottomed glasses. At such a young age, his strength is so terrifying, and his swordsmanship is not weaker than his own, and even surpasses him. He is proficient in various abilities, has no shortcomings, and even controls a strange energy that can prevent the healing effect of the fruits in his body. This is definitely a more terrifying guy than Roger back then. Coupled with his companion, the bald 5-old stars, he felt inexplicably shuddering. Fortunately. It's a pity, you have no chance. As a lamp destined to be extinguished in history, you should be honored. The bald 5-star grinned with a very bad expression. Lights off? You're on a dating show, so why don't you turn off the lights if you don't like me? Bai Yu was speechless. The soul of complaining in his body was burning. There were so many points that he didn't know where to start. This is the decision of the God above God, the Creator. You should and must obey it. The bald 5-old star's face turned cold, and he suddenly thrust the one-generation ghost in his hand into the ground. He raised his hands as if embracing nature. Why, you've even lost your weapon. Have you given up on the struggle? Bai Yu raised his eyebrows, feeling a sense of familiarity. Are we going to reach this point after all? It's all over, Garp lowered his eyes with a look of despair on his face. Sure enough, it is like this again. Is it an inescapable fate? Warring States frowned and looked solemn. Is it that thing? Lvnio's face changed slightly, as if he had thought of something. He glanced at Fujitora and received his affirmative look. I am finally clean, but why does it always feel like it's not that simple? Kizaru shook his head. He was probably mentally tortured by that guy. Despicable pirate. Welcome the judgment of the Creator. The bald 5-old star's eyes were furious, staring like 2 huge copper bells, and blood spurted out from his eyes. People couldn't help but worry that his eyes would explode like this. King Uranus, show your majesty to mortals. He raised his hands flat, and an indescribable aura emerged from his body, like an abyss or an ocean. In an instant, it directly suppressed Bai Yu's aura. What's the situation? Bai Yu frowned, his expression was solemn, and his heart sank slightly. This is definitely not his aura. There are traces of another person's power on him. There is a subtle similarity with the scene where the CP chief activated number 0. But the aura that emerged from his body was more than 100 times stronger. It was like a difference between cloud and mud. Before Bai Yu could figure out the reason, the situation on the field suddenly changed. A set of strange equipment appeared out of thin air. Several light balls of different colors slowly rotate around a huge sphere, running on their own unique orbits without interfering with each other. What's this? 6 different spheres rotate around a big ball in the center, going around and around, but they don't rotate randomly. They seem to have their own rules. The melon eaters who didn't know the truth looked at the spheres suspended in the air and slowly rotating according to their own orbits. They were all confused, Their eyes were full of question marks, and they couldn't figure out a clue. Bayou's face was a bit strange. Star model. He could get some clues. Judging from the appearance alone, the thing that the bald 5 old stars tinkered with was at least 9 times the same as the star model he saw in the astronomy exhibition in his previous life. Become similar. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 236. To put it bluntly, wasn't the moon in the previous life revolving around the Earth like this? Judging from the illustrations, they are exactly the same. If I am exhausted, there are 5 more. The world has changed. Wouldn't it be very scientific to have 5 more stars? Fall. Science is a hammer. In a world with high martial arts and high magic, what kind of trouble is it to create such a scientific star model? Bayou looked at the sky, the models that were moving rapidly according to their own orbits but never intersecting, and felt that he was about to burst. Did I accidentally travel through time again? Bayou fell into deep self-doubt, and finally realized the feeling of his opponent's 3 views collapsing. Why is this thing here? Just when Bayou was doubting his life, Robin's exclamation suddenly sounded on the field. This is the map drawn by O'Hara scholars. It turns out that it is all true and true. Robin's voice of surprise and joy rang out on the field, attracting everyone's attention. Robin, do you know this thing? What exactly is this? Luffy asked curiously. I know it, of course I know it. On O'Hara, great scholars are discussing these astronomy every day. The largest sphere in the middle is the Earth under our feet, the stars surrounding it are the moon. Dr. Clover said that they have the power to control the tides. Robin said a lot with tears in his eyes. Through the strange model in the sky, she seemed to see Dr. Clover smiling at her and encouraging her. No matter what the past history is, it was created by human beings and everyone must accept it. As long as we face it bravely, we can cope with anything. PhD. At this moment, Robin was crying like a tearful person. Ah! Is the earth beneath our feet a sphere? Wouldn't the water in the sea be spread down? Luffy's jaw dropped when he heard this. Robin sang, I'm not questioning it, but if there is really a sphere under our feet, wouldn't we fall when we go to the opposite side? Sanji frowned, and he looked puzzled even though he was so idiotic. Why? In this case, if I get lost and keep walking in one direction, won't I be able to come back sooner or later? A certain crazy swordsman seemed to have thought of some good idea, and couldn't help but high-five him happily. I am not kidding. This is a map jointly drawn by O'Hara University scholars. It is absolutely correct. Even Dr. Clover said it is correct. As a master of history, Robin had no choice but to give up when he encountered a wrong astronomical problem. While sticking to my own opinions, I secretly regretted that I was careless and didn't learn more knowledge when I was a child. If it was a ball shape, it would be possible. When I was on the empty island before, I curiously explored upwards. Although I did not reach the highest point, after rising to a certain height, the surface did not look flat when I looked at it. Analu's deep voice rang in everyone's ears. Versailles, who was calm and composed, was worthy of being the second best thunder god on the ship. Is the world beneath our feet really a ball? Ace couldn't help but stamp his feet, his face still a little surprised. Although Enel said so, it is really difficult for people to accept that their long-standing 3 views have been subverted in a short period of time. It's a pity. Nami, the navigator on the bed, fainted, otherwise she might be able to give Robin more support. Robin is right, the ground beneath our feet should indeed be a sphere. No, did you see the blue positions on the sphere? Those represent the sea under our feet. You, who was in a daze, finally came back to his senses and spoke. After Robin spoke, he suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a scene in the comics, and there seemed to be a similar map in O'Hara's collection. Fortunately, with the improvement of his strength, Bai unexpectedly awakened the ability of photographic memory, and barely remembered the scene he had seen in his mind. Bai, who finally got rid of the cloud of doubt, finally breathed a sigh of relief and had time to focus on release it. Wow, it turns out Robin was telling the truth. Bai is worthy of being Bai. He won the unanimous trust of his friends as soon as he opened his mouth. If the blue position is the sea, then isn't this strange raised position the holy land of the celestial dragons, Marijoa? Jinbei pointed to a conspicuous place on the sphere and said in surprise. Marijoa? Then isn't this place a windless zone? Follow it down, this is the East China Sea, right? Zoro, that is our hometown. Luffy grabbed the green algae head next to him and turned into mosquito-repellent eyes, and said with excitement on his face. The East China Sea, the West Sea, the Great Waterway, found it? Kingdom of Alabasta, Wai, your hometown is here. By the way, Chopper, where is your hometown? Why didn't I see you looking for it? Jinbei, look at that place. Is it Fishman Island? It looks like it. The direction of the development of the incident was like stepping on a banana peel, heading in a strange direction under Luffy's crooked building. Seeing a final battle to the death, it will develop into the One Piece version of Tadpole looking for Mom or the map recognition battle in Science Lecture Hall. The sudden change of painting style made Baiyu helplessly lift his forehead. Why don't you tell me? The 5 old stars are the 5 old stars. To be able to sit in such a high position, people still have 2 skills. At least their chi nurturing skills are absolutely top-notch. After getting rid of the previous CP chief, there was still some left in the 8 streets and 3 turns. It was so off-topic that it was completely ignored. If it were left to the CP chief, I'm afraid he would be furious and start to get angry. Now this 5-year-old bald star, he was stunned to hold it back. He didn't show any anger at all, and he still had a smile on his lips. Sample. It seems like you accept things pretty quickly. The bald 5-old star used the Deki Tetsu in his hand as a crutch to support his body. Baiyu frowned slightly. He always felt that this guy's smile was fake, and he couldn't help but want to rush up and punch him twice, smiling. There seems to be a hint of superiority in his eyes. This familiar look always feels like the surprise of seeing a chimpanzee using tools in the zoo. It's a pity that no matter what, it can't change your fate of being extinguished in history. The bald old star sighed and squeezed out 2 drops of crocodile tears from the corner of his eyes. The sight of a cat crying and a mouse pretending to be compassionate was very strong. It's just a celestial model. Stop using it to scare people. There are many O'Hara scholars who know about this. Who are you trying to scare with this? Using Huahuaguo as a trumpet, Robin's voice played in a loop on the field. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 237. After covering up the tears, a hint of cunning flashed in the corners of Robin's bright eyes. As a smart woman, of course she would not be so stupid. She really thought that the mighty 5 old stars would come up with a superficial model to fool them. Robin said this purely as a provocation, trying to get the other party to tell more useful information and help Baiyu as much as possible. In terms of strength, she is far behind. She is not even qualified to intervene, so she can only use this inconspicuous little method to help outside the field. It's you, O'Hara's sole survivor, son of the devil Robin. The bald 5 old star raised his non-existent eyebrows and looked over with cold eyes. No wonder the Straw Hats accept the reality of the world so easily. I almost forgot about you. Snored. So what if it's me? These are just tricks to fool people, and even the sky is just some astronomical models. Robin faced the other person's eyes full of murderous intent. Suppressing the fear in his heart, he gritted his teeth and opened his mouth, and continued to stimulate. Model? That's just his appearance. How can ignorant mortals like you see the reality of the world? Aren't you looking for the historical text and the three ancient weapons? Neptune Poseidon is able to summon all Neptune species. Hades Pluto has the power to destroy an island with one shot. Aren't you curious about the most mysterious king? How powerful is Uranus? The bald five-star looked at Robin with amusement. How could Robin's little thoughts escape his eyes? He just believed that with absolute power, all conspiracies are just paper tigers. King of Heaven. What? Robin's heart sank, as if he had fallen into a deep valley, and had a very bad feeling. Have you seen the power of Zero to control natural disasters? That was copied from Uranus, but compared to his true power, number 0 is just a child's toy. The bald five-old star's smile was very evil. The first generation ghost in his hand was full of light. After being frustrated so many times, he finally became proud again. A kid's thing? Is that a lie? How could that kind of terrifying power be possible? Jinbi couldn't help but swallow. Although the CP commander who controls Zero behaves like a fool in every aspect, he is 90% similar to his master Tianlong. But the power he showed was not false at all. Spurting magma, violent thunder, terrifying lightning, raging hurricanes, each of them has the power of a naval admiral, no less powerful than the top generals. It also has the ability to wirelessly reset and refresh. This means that the opponent is by you. If it were Ace, Luffy and Annie would go up. It's hard to say the outcome, but at least it won't be decided in a short period of time. This kind of terrifying power can actually be said to be a child's toy. Come on. Jinbei's ferocious face couldn't help but show deep fear. Mortal knowledge. The bald five-old star glanced disdainfully. The power of King Uranus can control natural disasters. This is the legacy of the Creator and the most holy and supreme power. A fanatical voice came from him. He released the right hand of the first-generation ghost, raised it slightly, and nodded towards the astronomical model in the sky. As if in response to his action. 6 stars surrounding the central star, among the planets rotating rapidly along their respective orbits, one suddenly shines brightly. As descendants of the Creator and leaders of the celestial dragons, we respectively control the celestial kings, a part of Uranus, a power that mortals could never imagine. The first generation ghost swung forward brazenly, and the planet bloomed with brilliance. He suddenly rushed forward and deviated from his original orbit. The central sphere, representing the position of the ocean, suddenly surged, as if someone had taken it. With the invisible giant's stick, Wang Yangziguo stirred up the sea and caused endless whirlpools of chaos. The skyrocketing sea water swallowed up a large amount of land in an instant. The already blue star became even more numerous. We control the position and movement of the moon, control the tidal force of floods and tsunamis, and can simulate the movement of all natural disasters. This is the real King Uranus. The powerful base of the bald five-star made the curtain call for the science popularization. King of Uranus, Uranus represents the moon. Can the celestial dragon simulate natural disasters and freely control the power of ocean tides? Not only are there 6 moons in the sky, but they can also be artificially affected. Does the flooded city in the capital of 7 waters, the rumored ancient kingdom, really exist? Suddenly, hearing this shocking news, the Straw Hats were all stunned. The moon and tsunamis that they were accustomed to can be manipulated by humans. Even, the changes of continental plates and the formation of the 4 seas. The special purpose of the Red Earth continent, and the torn world. They are all most likely created by the other party. This kind of power to move mountains and fill seas, comparable to myths, is simply beyond the imagination of humans. Luffy, who was so nervous, was dumbfounded. He got up. Judging from the ability demonstrated by this guy, couldn't he just flood his hometown? Can this kind of enemy really be resisted? Even the Navy heard about the shocking news that was caught off guard. There was an uproar. All the middle and lower level soldiers had their worldviews shattered upon hearing this. Even Green Bull couldn't help but glance at Fujitora. Are we so tough in the background? Why didn't you tell me? I almost couldn't hold back the provocation. Fujitora rolled his eyes and turned his head away, not bothering to pay attention to this guy. On the other hand, Garp and Sengoku, these two retired old guys, looked unsurprised, as if they had known about it for a long time, and might have even seen it with their own eyes. In the power of God, awaken. Now, be at ease and put on the Shanghai Tower stone handcuffs. I can take you to the Judiciary Island and make you accept the punishment of the law. This is your last way to survive. The bald 5 old stars held the first generation ghost in their arms and stopped the blood flowing from their arms. He spread his power around wantonly. He manipulated natural disasters and controlled the power of the moon to hang high in the sky. Under the terrifying pressure, the air pressure became abnormal. Lo, the samurai defending on the coastline were frightened for a long time. They had no fighting spirit at all and almost died lying down. Even the Straw Hat's fighting spirit was uncontrollably depressed. Luffy was just a crass. Yeah, I didn't feel any pressure and I still had high morale. No matter the natural disaster, no matter the moon, I want to be the man of One Piece. I won't let him go without a fight. Defeat me if you can. Luffy yelled, waving his rubber fist. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 238. You must be lying. If you really had the ability to flood the island, you would probably have done it a long time ago. How could you still be here talking to us so much nonsense? As if inspired by Luffy's fighting spirit, Robin also ignited her faith. Flowers and fruits bloomed everywhere, spreading her voice and working hard to inspire her companions' fighting spirit. Ignorant humans. Don't regard my compassion as your unscrupulous capital. A stern look flashed in the eyes of the bald 5 old star. Of course what he said is true, otherwise he wouldn't have the confidence to come face to face with Baiyu alone. He still understands the reason why a daughter of a wealthy family should not be punished. But, he did miss one point. If you want to use a powerful force that far exceeds your ability, the price you pay must be huge. Otherwise, according to the character of the Tianlong people, they would have fought wherever they pointed. Where would it be the turn of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon, so arrogant in the White Earth world? If you want to drive the King of Heaven, Uranus, the price you want to pay is life. Although he, as the 5 old stars, has long obtained eternal life through the fruit of surgery, but driving him the price paid would not be small at all. Otherwise, where did his companions get their white beards? The original intention was to use momentum and intimidation to achieve the effect of subduing the enemy without fighting. Get rid of the Straw Hats without using this killer weapon. Just when the plan was about to succeed, a roadblock suddenly appeared. The 5 bald stars' lungs almost exploded with anger. Just when they were about to open their mouths to say something else, Robin spoke first again. Snored. Stop talking nonsense, feel guilty. Don't fall for this guy's trick, everyone, get ready to take action and deal with this guy together. Robin's voice came from all directions. Ships, seawater, sails, the flowers growing everywhere have become her excellent sounding tubes. The expansion effect of the flowers and fruits has been used to the extreme by her, treating it as it's a propaganda tool, it just boosts morale on the field. Damn it! The bald 5-star looked at Robin with an extremely vicious look. His vicious eyes were like a poisonous snake lurking in the dark, and his back hurt when he stared at him. At this point, if he doesn't want to pay a price, it is no longer possible to capture all the Straw Hats and fulfill Lord Im's order. Looking at the Straw Hats, they are ready to move, especially the leaders. The hip-hop man with the rebellious face has already started controlling thunder and lightning. The fists of the guy with Roger's sinful blood were already ignited with flames. The other guy with thick nerves had long dragons of red blood steaming from his body. There were other guys next to them who were ready to move. He knows that he can't wait any longer. Otherwise, things will really only lead to the situation that he least wants to see. Want to take action? Then come and feel for yourself how weak you are. A hint of cruelty flashed in the eyes of the bald five-old star, and he swung the first-generation ghost Toru in his hand forward. He raised the knife and struck very slowly, as if he was pulling something terrifying down. Boom, a silent loud noise came from the top of the head, resounding in the hearts of everyone on the battlefield, as if there was some great will, casting a watching gaze. What it is? The huge movement made everyone couldn't help but stop and turn their attention to the sky. They saw a clear sky with thousands of miles of blue sky. Suddenly an extremely bright star appeared, shining brightly in the sky. Its dazzling light, a time actually suppressed the brilliance of the sun above our heads. Stars appear. Are those true? Is it too late for us to run now? Rumble. Just when everyone was looking up at the sky in confusion, the hull beneath them suddenly shook violently. A large number of waves suddenly appeared on the calm sea bottom, and many fish jumped onto the boat. Waves, big waves. How could there be such high waves without a hurricane? No, the boat is about to capsize. Jump out of the boat and escape. Help, I am a person with abilities and cannot touch the sea water. Someone come and save me. The shore, there are big waves on the shore, run quickly. You can't defend yourself against this kind of attack. There were storms on the plains and waves in the bitter sea. The silent sea suddenly rolled violently, like a bad stomach. A large number of whirlpools suddenly emerged from the sea. The terrifying undercurrent swallowed up several warships and hundreds of warships in an instant. The frigate, with a height of several hundred meters, together with the thousands of naval soldiers on board, was directly submerged in the whirlpool without even a bubble rising. The waves hundreds of meters high were even more terrifying. A wave hit the ship and the ship was directly covered with wounds. There are 100 holes. On the turbulent water, even the main ship cannot guarantee safety. Many naval soldiers on the ship, after failing to rescue the ship, abandoned the ship and jumped into the sea, struggling for the only chance of survival. The sea on the sea was full of holes. No matter how difficult it is, there are still warships to rely on. The warriors defending on the coastline are really miserable. Big waves hundreds of meters high hit, overwhelming the earth, and instantly swallowed up the defenses on the reef, one after another. The terrifying distance, without any pause. Waves came one after another. In the blink of an eye, the rocky reef beach was engulfed in the endless ocean. The island is beginning to be submerged by the sea. The ruthless waves make no distinction between friend and foe. In the blink of an eye, no one knows how many lives have been swallowed up. Help me. I don't want to die. Marshal of the Warring States period, Marshal Ching Pheasant, help me. I can't swim. The sound of crying and shouting echoed on the sea. In just a short moment, the number of casualties in the Navy was probably more than 10 times greater than those who died in the battle with the Straw Hats. Kizaru, let's do it together. I manipulated gravity to float the boat and the injured, and you and Green Bull quickly placed your hands on the boat. Fujitora couldn't sit still anymore after seeing the tragic sight of mourning people everywhere. Even if there was not much fruit power left in his body, it still couldn't stop him from taking action. Hey, now it's... Huang Sir looked at the powerful bald five-old star with a hesitant expression on his face. He was about to say something to Fujitora. As a result, he met this guy's face with many ravines. He was clearly an old blind man with his eyes closed tightly, but Huang Sirang felt that a sharp-edged gaze came out of his eyes and penetrated his heart. We are admirals. Don't forget the cape behind you. Fujitora tightly clutched the purple bathrobe on his body, and the word justice on the cloak rustled in the wind. Kizaru laughed dumbly, and a strange color unexpectedly bloomed on his usually wretched face. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 239. In a flash of golden light, his slender figure disappeared directly from the spot. There is only one ambiguous sentence left: I'm just an office worker who works hard to clock in. Don't put so much pressure on me, okay? Fujitora and Green Bull looked at each other and smiled, finally allowing this slippery loach to take action. Kizaru has activated the power of the Fruit's awakening to rescue us, so let's do it quickly. Good. A smile flashed across Green Bull's handsome face. After nodding, his armed and domineering appearance wrapped around him. Then he also flashed and disappeared on the ship. Weightless control. The terrifying power spread from Fujitora, frantically squeezing the ability of the gravity fruit. Bang, 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 lost the influence of gravity, and in the weightless environment, many warships and soldiers who were submerged in the sea began to the head emerged from the sea. No matter how hard it was, I tried my best to hug Shanban beside me, just enough to catch my breath and wait for the next rescue. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The light track of the 8-foot mirror took a long way on the sea. Shooting, directly covering the entire battlefield. Kizaru, who turned into light, shuttled through the mirror like this, following Fujitora's guidance, constantly rescuing the soldiers who poked their heads out of the sea. He was sneaky and slippery. The monkey spirit was turned into an old scalper who was working hard. The Green Bull was not to be outdone and turned into an afterimage. The light green wind surrounded him, and his speed was extremely fast. Only light green figures were seen, one after another, in that he constantly shuttled across the sea, rescuing sailors struggling in the water, but no one could really see his movements clearly. Compared with the yellow sir that turned into photons and shuttled back and forth, the Green Bull's speed was not necessarily much slower. Phew, I'm finally done. Sir Huang, who had completed 10 years of exercise in one day, slumped in his seat with his legs crossed. After the 3 admirals of the Navy worked together, they finally managed to control the situation. Fujitora managed to hold on and emptied a main ship and floated it. Carry all the wounded on it and transport them to an area as far away from the wind and waves as possible. After the matter finally came to an end, Kizaru was paralyzed into photons with a look of being beaten, and he looked at the Wulaoxing without any trace. On the expressionless face, there was neither the guilt of accidentally killing the Navy nor the relief that Kizaru and the other 3 had worked hard to rescue and save the situation. There is only endless indifference, aloof disregard. Tisk, the celestial dragons and the 5 old stars are really scary guys, Huang Sir complained in his heart with unknown meaning. His face did not distinguish between happiness and anger. Gandhi Fujitora, who was desperately trying to lift the main ship into the air and away from the wind and waves, suddenly changed his expression. Has the storm stopped? Is it finally over? Fujitora looked at the sea in surprise. Although there are still turbulences, it is many times better than the previous turmoil. At least the warship is inside and nothing will happen. Snort. The bald 5 old star snorted coldly, and slowly took back the first-generation ghost in his hand. The shock was barely enough here. It's not because Fujitora couldn't hold it in, he didn't have the spare time to care about those insignificant things. What a bastard. Purely, if he continues to activate the King of Heaven, it will have a serious impact on his lifespan. In less than a quarter of an hour, he lost 3 eyebrows. These are 3 eyebrows on the scale of his eternal life. 3 sticks, used to exchange the lives of a bunch of trash fish, is a waste of blood. Now, are you fully aware of your weakness and powerlessness? The bald 5 old star with full posture, his eyes are full of indifference, full of a sense of superiority. Hateful. Robin gritted her silver teeth, and the tsunami-like attack destroyed all the illusions in her heart. She couldn't help but think of O'Hara when the artillery fire roared that day. Is it really impossible to resist forever, Doctor? Tears were like broken pearls, falling one after another from Robin's eyes filled with water, and he knelt weakly on the ground, his nails digging into his flesh. Blood seeped out from her fingertips, but she seemed not to notice any pain. I'm not, ugh, I am the man who wants to, ugh, become the Pirate King, ugh. Absolutely, absolutely impossible to give up. Luffy's indomitable will drove him to shout out his dream. However, the process seemed a bit strange. This man who aspired to become the Pirate King unexpectedly discovered that, as a rubber man, he could actually eat enough. There was a loophole like seasickness. The turbulent sea surface caused the Sunshine Mile to shake violently. With his rubber body, of course he wouldn't care about this bump. But he had a belly full of things, but he didn't have this ability. The outside was shaking, and the inside was turbulent. Not long after, Luffy couldn't help but hold onto the wall and vomited. After finally regaining his breath, the red steam on the surface of the body had long since dissipated, and the blood turned into a long dragon. And even disappeared long ago. With a disheveled look on his face, he couldn't even shout a slogan. He didn't look like he could continue fighting. Snort. Face it, pathetic mortals. Now, surrender, my previous promise remains valid. As long as you are willing to wear Shanghai Lushi handcuffs and go to Judiciary Island to face trial, I am willing to let you live. It's an expedient measure anyway. Rather than letting him lose his life, it's better to have his reputation tarnished. Anyway, as long as people who know don't dare to speak out, it means it didn't happen. They are smearing history and covering up the past. It's not the first time I've done it. Once it's familiar twice. I don't know how many times I've done it. I've already become familiar with it. Otherwise, not only you, but this entire continent will be destroyed. To disobey the Creator's will, the only possibility is to be submerged in history. The bald 5-old star's face was indifferent and ruthless, and the future of Wano country was directly used by him as a bargaining chip. When he said this, submerge a continent, his eyes didn't waver at all. He was as relaxed and carefree as a child trying to divert water into an ant hole. At the end, she opened her mouth viciously at Robin. Just like O'Hara back then, she was completely submerged in history, but this time, there will be no more Devil's Son escaping. This person ruined her good deeds, causing him to lose in vain. The woman with the lifespan of 3 eyebrows, he has long held a grudge, and now he will collect some interest. After she completely fell into his hands, haha. The bald 5-old star's face turned hideous unconsciously. Robin suddenly felt a chill rising up his spine. Could it be that she could only keep making the same mistakes all the time? Thick despair covered her body, suppressing all her thoughts. Ah! Smiles rang out on the field. Who? The bald 5-star raised a cold eyebrow. At this time, there are still people who dare to contradict him. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 240. Hee hee. Cheerful laughter rang out on the field, which seemed a bit incompatible with the low-pressure atmosphere. Although the sound is not loud. But the person present was not a master with sharp ears and eyes, and a body that was developed to an extremely high degree. It attracted their attention immediately. They all turned their eyes and looked towards the place where the laughter sounded. It's you. The bald 5-star looked at Baiyu in front of him with a gloomy expression. The momentum on his body was as deep as the sea, and he was overwhelming. The weird smile on this guy's face made him feel that he had a chance to win, and he suddenly felt something bad. It's me, what's wrong? Baiyu shook off Jing Kunluo in his hand, with a nonchalant look on his face. He didn't take the threat of the bald 5 old stars seriously at all. He was as comfortable as the breeze blowing on his face. Now at this time, you can still laugh, you really don't know how to live or die. The bald 5 old star snorted coldly, and the look in his eyes became even colder. Why can't you laugh? Your words are so funny that I can't help it. You don't really think you've got us, do you? Ha ha ha. Bayou curled his lips and laughed as if no one else was watching. He didn't take the bald 5 old star in front of him with a sinking face at all. Ah! You really can't see the coffin without crying. Since you have repeatedly betrayed my good intentions, then all of you must die. The eyes of the bald 5 old star flashed with a sharp look. The nameless gravity emanated from his body, pulling him to float high into the sky. The first generation ghost held tightly in his right hand swung forward vigorously. It was like a god judging all living beings. It was calm. The sea surface suddenly became turbulent again. Tsunamis and undercurrents that were more ferocious than before appeared on the sea surface again. Since simple threats have no effect, let them feel the pain caused by natural disasters. Their eyes are filled with tears. The bald 5-star with a vicious look completely activated the power of the King of Heaven, Uranus, and decided to kill him first and bleed him into a river. The huge waves raised by the sea covered the sky and even the sun, the wind and thunder, lightning and thunder, a scene of doomsday. Depend on. Fujitora, who finally took a breath, couldn't help but curse secretly. He gritted his teeth and activated the gravity fruit, blocked the huge waves, and desperately lifted the main ship carrying the wounded into the sky. Drop after drop of sweat. The bead slipped from his ravaged face, but he still gritted his teeth, closed his eyes tightly, and struggled to hold on, showing no sign of giving up. Meow Meow sighed, life is not easy. Could it be that the outcome is always destined? No matter how hard you try, you still can't change it? Is this my destiny? Robin clenched his fists tightly, his tears already forming a thread. Through the doomsday scene in front of her, she seemed to see O'Hara being covered in artillery fire and razed to the ground under the demon-slaying order, and the friendly academics were mercilessly killed. The books they regarded as treasures were all buried in the flames. The relatives, uncles, and aunts on the island, were swallowed up by the sea of fire one by one. Endless despair pulled her into the abyss. While she was falling endlessly, there was also an extreme cold current, and a cold feeling rose from the bottom of her heart, as if she was going to be completely frozen into ice. Just when she was completely wrapped in despair and deeply immersed in the cold erosion, a pair of warm hands suddenly covered her shoulders, bringing her back to reality. Robin raised his head suddenly and met Bayou's gentle gaze. Don't worry, I've got everything covered. There is a convincing power in the plain words. White feather. Robin's big, watery eyes were filled with tears. In his gloomy despair, because of Bayou's words, his expression suddenly lit up with endless energy. The light of hope flickered in her eyes. The burning trust in his eyes made Bayou feel warmer in his heart. Just wait here for a while. Bayou unconsciously touched the girl's head, and the softness between the hair tips made him feel happy. He was not lying. The power exerted by the bald 5 old stars was indeed far beyond his expectation. He moves mountains and fills seas at every turn, destroys heaven and earth, and divides the world. The King of Heaven, Uranus, controls natural disasters and controls the power of the moon. It is really beyond imagination. Even the most powerful auxiliary system has given Bayou the ability to copy the power of the crew. The ability, coupled with the newly controlled destructive power, is still in a weak state after all. In the New World, it can be said that it is difficult to find an opponent, but in the end it still belongs to the category of human beings. Compared with this kind of natural disaster-like power, it really pales in comparison. In the fantasy world, it is too buggy to create a technological Earth-Moon system. But, no one said that only the King of Heaven, Uranus, can use it? Bayou's eyes burst out, a bright light shines out. Do you really think that Bayou, who just stood there without saying a word, was watching a show in a daze? But he has been trying to use the strange power contained in Jin Kun Luo to control the so-called sixth sequence. No wonder the Navy has been obsessed with the sword in his hand and worked hard. It turns out that it is not only one of the supreme sharp swords, but also related to the King of Heaven, Uranus. The Navy is also pursuing the traces of the king. It seems that they are not innocent either. The look in Bayou's eyes is dark, as if he has thought of something interesting. But, no matter what their plans are, the things are mine now. Instead of endless nonsense here, why not see the real story below? Let me see what you can do. Jin Kun Luo pointed forward in his hand, and Bayou felt confident. Hateful mortals who don't know whether to live or die. The bald 5 stars face was as dark as water, and the last threat did not come to pass. After using many methods, I didn't expect that I would have to reach this point, using my lifespan to activate the King of Heaven. Damn, that's 10 years of aging. Using the surgical fruit to gain infinite lifespan does not mean that you will not die. Every time the power of the Heavenly King is used, even if they have eternal life, they will still age uncontrollably for 10 years, when their bodies are completely eroded by aging. The inevitable death will come to them. 10 years. The bald 5-old star felt so distressed that he was bleeding. With eternal life, of course he is reluctant to pay such a high price, but when he thinks of the price of disobeying that being, Lord, even though he ignored the casualties of the Navy, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. Wu feared the scars on his body and fed the blood to the first-generation ghost to devour. The bald 5-old stars, who seemed to have no emotion or concept of pain, couldn't help but I shivered deeply. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 241. No. This guy must die. No matter how high the price is, we must never disobey Lord Im's orders. The bald 5-old star's eyes were full of viciousness, and he no longer cared about the erosion of his lifespan. Gritting his teeth, he struggled to activate the power of the King of Heaven, Uranus. It is no longer the same small fight as before, but he has completely brought his great power to the world. Natural disaster is coming. Boom, the huge stars are blooming with dazzling brilliance in the daytime. A superstar like a morning star keeps magnifying, and magnifying in the eyes of everyone. Sky, the stars in the sky are going to fall. Help! The war at sea is not over yet. Will the sky crack again? Woo, I don't want to die yet, General Fujitora, help me. The stars hanging high in the sky began to slowly fall downwards, and everyone present was heartbroken. No matter they were bold or timid, they all lost the motivation to resist. This is not a meteorite, but a real thing in the sky. The moon. Far larger than the area of the mainland, it fell from the sky. The coverage area is probably enough to annihilate and evaporate the entire East China Sea. Let alone resist it, even escape. No matter the naval soldiers on the warship, or the garrison warriors of the country collapsed on the ground with no fighting spirit, all looking like they were waiting for death with their eyes closed. Only the ship that was lifted up in the sky by Fujitora's rescue, and the surviving navy inside still had a look in their eyes. There was no hope at all. They were shouting Fujitora's name, hoping that he would take action again. Admiral Fujitora's fruit ability is to control gravity. Since he can lift ships, he can also lift the falling moon into the sky again, right? The surviving Navy soldiers all thought so. Fujitora's head was full of questions. What I'm talking about is the gravity fruit, not the moon fruit. Even in its heyday, it took a lot of effort to pull down a few meteorites. Now when this fruit power is about to run out of ammunition and food, you want me to hold up the moon. If I really have the strength, why do I need to be a general in this miserable state? He had long since ousted Cyborg Kong and taken over as the commander-in-chief of the world government, transforming the world government into his own shape according to his own will. Feeling the earnest eyes on him, Fujitora felt no trace of relief in his heart. Just an urge to vomit blood when I feel so tired. Destroy it quickly, we are tired. Fujitora tightened the purple bathrobe tightly, and had the thought of letting go, lurking in his heart. Wrong. It's not that the moon is falling. The consequences of the moon's fall are not something they can afford. He is controlling the orbit of the moon to affect the tidal force in the sea. Robin's shouting voice came from the loudspeakers on the battlefield. As the only survivor of the O'Hara incident in the world, although she is only a historian, not an astronomer, she has been influenced by it since she was a child. The knowledge she heard still allowed her to discover some clues in the sky. She quickly tried her best to tell her friends on the ship the information she had detected. Snort. Even if it's not the moon falling, so what if it's the tidal force? This is the force of nature, an irreversible natural disaster. The ocean driven by the tide is enough to submerge all materials in the world. No matter how powerful a person is, or how ancient a country is, they will be as small as dust under the power of the ocean. The bald 5-old star snorted coldly. Even if Robin revealed the truth, the indifferent expression on his face still did not change at all. When he completely activated the King of Heaven Uranus, then everything had already turned into the outcome is settled. Although the price is extremely heavy, the effect is undeniably powerful. It was you who forced me, you all must die today. As a lamp destined to be extinguished in history, this is your burial place. The bald 5-old stars floated in the air, holding the right hand of the first-generation ghost, hanging down slightly. There was only aloof indifference on his face, and his cold pupils stared down. He was like the god who caused the great flood to destroy the world, with ruthless coldness. Do whatever you want. The waves surged under his gaze, and the waves raged under his feet. The tidal force originating from the moon was far beyond what human beings could resist. Half of the coastline was swallowed up in an instant. The crazily rising seawater still had no impact. The limit of stopping even a little bit. He looks like he won't give up until the country of Wano is completely engulfed. Oh no, no, no. I'm going to die. I suddenly got a disease that will kill me if I touch the sea water. Frankie, let's get on the Sunshine Miles and run away. Upso jumped over from the coastline with the black coffin in his arms, and pulled up the boatman next to him with tears in his eyes. Run, run away. This. In the current situation, Wano country is about to be submerged. If we don't run away, it will be too late. What are you still hesitating about? Upso's nose and tears urged Frankie to. I didn't say I wouldn't leave, it's just that, in this situation, look at this tide. Frankie looked embarrassed and started to speak intermittently. Didn't you say that Sunshine Miles is super powerful and has various hidden functions? What are you still fussing about? It's too late if it's too late. Captain, hurry up and hurry him up. The anxious Upso was almost crying when he met the grinding Frankie. Just use the one you had before, blast blast. Enelu, you also know that the metal ball is charging. Upso impatiently gestured with his hands, explained with words and gestures, and pulled Enelu, who was surrounded by lightning next to him. But, no matter how powerful the Sunshine Miles is, even if it is mixed with some Pluto drawings, it is still just a ship, not Noah's Ark. Tidal forces, floods, etc. are not within his defense range at all. Frankie told the truth without tears. What? The last hope was shattered, and Upso was completely panicked now. Although the Sunshine Miles has the ability to float with the help of Enel, a reference to the Ark's motto, it must be driven by electricity or thermal energy. Judging from the scope of the tidal force and the enemies watching eagerly, our power is simply not enough to escape from this place. Moreover, I can feel that the magnetic field here has been disrupted, even more chaotic than Upside Down Mountain. On the unmarked sea, without the guidance of the magnetic field, we will all be lost in the sea. After prying his mouth open, he didn't need Upso to prompt him, and he started talking by himself. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed, as if he had thought of something. A trace of fear suddenly appeared in Frankie's eyes. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 242. The capital of Seven Waters, the ancient city below the capital of Seven Waters was submerged in the tide. Even in the capital of Seven Waters, there is not a single ship that can escape from the shipwreck. Do you think it's possible for us? Frankie's eyes were filled with despair, and after thinking of the legends circulating in the capital of Seven Waters, he suddenly had a terrible guess in his mind. The tidal natural disaster that flooded the ancient city was man-made. Just like the same scene today happened in the ruins under the capital of Seven Waters. Once this thought arose, it took root and grew in Frankie's heart uncontrollably. In an instant, it occupied his entire mind. Unfortunately, I'm going to die. I can't pass this news to my master, brother. Woohoo, in this case, aren't we doomed? What should I do? I can't swim. I really have a disease that will kill me if I touch sea water. Upso sat down on the ground, the slingshot in his hand hanging casually, his eyes full of despair. Enjoy your last moments. Savor the taste of despair. Who told you to be the lamp designated to be extinguished by I'm Sama? GGG. Seeing the despair on the faces of the Straw Hats, the Bald Five finally became happy. After finally regaining his place, he looked unruly and let out a difficult laugh. Despair? We don't have the appetite, so let's leave it to you to eat slowly. Just when he was laughing happily, Bayou's plain voice sounded on the field again. Bayou, who secretly opened a small stove with Robin, finally remembered that there was still a guy in the sky who had not been solved, and he was reluctant to leave Wen Township. Shiren walked out. You again. The Bald Five-Old Star frowned, and the bad feeling in his heart became more intense. He always felt that something was wrong and something was going to go wrong. That's right, it's me. Bayou curled his lips and retorted directly. Ignoring the Bald Five-Old Star's eyes full of hatred, he walked forward slowly. If eyes could kill, Bayou would have been taken advantage of by that guy with his penetrating eyes. 8 UN. Vice Captain. Upso tried hard to hold back his tears and looked at Bayou nervously, his eyes full of hope. Don't worry, with me here, these are just minor problems. Bayou looked relaxed and didn't pay attention to the things in front of him at all. The vice captain said it was okay and I could finally relax. Phew, it scared me to death. I thought I really had to confess this time. To be able to calm down such a terrifying tsunami is really worthy of being a boss. Bayou's calm look brought great confidence to his companions on the boat. Speaking of which, Upso, you are very brave today. Thank you very much for greeting Nami for me. Bayou smiled at Upso. Vice Captain, it's actually all Yan Zhuangying's credit. Upso was moved and ashamed at the same time. Bayou's actions that moved him were always in his eyes. I am ashamed of myself. In the end, I still dare not face the battle and can only let that guy appear. No matter who you are, they are all part of you. Moreover, I saw the way you used a slingshot to protect Nami before, you are so brave. Bayou waved his hand and gave a thumbs up with a serious look on his face. Luffy relied on him in good times, but Upso didn't brag for nothing in bad times. Although he joined, Upso's opportunities to perform were much less than in the original work. But, in Bayou's heart, He has always been very optimistic about him. Deputy Captain. Upso looked as if he was extremely moved. Finally, he finally found a bull who can appreciate him. Enough. If you want to show brotherhood, go to hell and show it. Your death date has come, you all must die. Once again reduced to a background, the bald five-old star who was completely ignored was completely angry. The terrifying tide set off huge waves. The sea water swept the whole world, and the sky and the earth turned into a sea of Wang-yang. Laugh. It seems that some people can't wait any longer and are eager to die. Bai Yu curved the corner of his mouth and sneered. Even when you are about to die, you are still here talking nonsense to me. Ridiculous. The bald five-old star snorted coldly, and swung the first-generation ghost Toru in his hand forward with all his strength. The long sword, full of blood, swung a bloody slash, and slashed towards Bai Yu as if to vent his anger. One knife flow breaking the sky. Bai Yu didn't even raise his eyes, and swung the golden kunluo in his hand forward. The black slash cut through the void, directly disintegrating the bloody sword shadow into ashes. The swordsmanship of Wu Laoxing was impossible to fight back in front of Bai Yu. Force. You don't really think that possessing one of the three ancient weapons can make you invincible in this world, right? A slightly mysterious tone came out of Bai Yu's mouth. Do you want to say that you also have three major weapons? The bald five-old star frowned and immediately rejected his guess. Impossible. Princess White Star has always been on Fishman Island and has never come out. Besides, Neptune is still a baby, so there is no way she can compete with Uranus. Yahuwah, I didn't expect you to know the existence of Princess Bai Xing. Bai Yu raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. With his intervention, the Straw Hats directly intercepted Jinbei after the war at the top. He had never been to Fishman Island. Logically speaking, Princess White Star was hiding from Vander. The reason why Dakin 9 attacked should have been huddled in the hard shell tower. Besides, with Princess Otohim's arrangements, Princess Shirahoshi should have been hiding her abilities. How could the world government far away know about it? It became more and more complicated. Bai Yu frowned slightly, as if he thought of something, and suddenly said, "How do you know the existence of Neptune?" The power of the underworld fruit and the god of death burst out at the same time. Bai Yu's dark eyes burst out with a blur of brilliance, and a strong power of bewitchment spread along his eyes. As early as when she was 6 years old, we had completely discovered the power of Neptune. Lord Yuma was most familiar with it. Moreover, Lord Yuma was a close relative at that time. Wu Laoxing was caught off guard and was attacked. He explained the situation like beans poured out of a bamboo tube. The last king of heaven, Uranus, suddenly exerted force, and the ancient and majestic aura emerged from him, forcibly dispersing Bai Yu's bewitching skills. When he regained consciousness, he quickly shut his mouth tightly, not daring to say another word. However, the few words revealed are enough to make people imagine. Have you discovered it a long time ago, and have you been hiding it all this time? And that seems to have a close relationship with Neptune. Bai Yu murmured to himself, with a glint in his eyes, as if he was thinking about some clues.